What's up, YouTube? Jeff Bryant's here with a review of the Arctic Cat M8000 Mountain Cat Alpha 1 ATAC in a 165. Yeah, that was kind of a mouthful. First things first, I have no affiliation with Arctic Cat. I bought this sled from a shop. It was a demo, so it was used, but it only had 500 miles. It is a 2021, so for all intents and purposes, we can treat this like it was a new sled. Being this is my first sled review on this channel, I should mention that I've ridden every brand's mountain sled in every motor configuration. I'm not brand loyal whatsoever. The kind of riding I like to do is obviously mountain riding. The more technical, the more difficult, the kind of gnarlier tree terrain is what I'm into. I jump a little bit, but by no means am I a jumper. I'm pretty bored with just straight up and down hill climbs. That's not what I like to do, nor do I find it all that safe, generally speaking. I'll do it if I have to and it's a safe day and we're getting from one area to another, but yeah, usually I'm looking for tree lines, and the steeper, the harder, the more likely I am to get stuck, the more I tend to like it. Type 2 snowmobile fun, whatever. As always, reviews that take place earlier in the season can be a little trickier because the snowpack is simply more thin, less base equals less traction means you kind of have to reorient what you can and can't do with the machine. You just don't have that layer where the track can really grab. Usually you're punching through all the way to the ground. So take that into account when you're watching this. This sled would be more capable as you let the snowpack set up. Just hasn't happened here in the Tetons yet. This review is of a 100% stock snowmobile. Literally no changes were made. I did wrap it halfway through the review, but let's be honest, that doesn't do anything to the performance, despite what Facebook may say. I'll be building this sled into a turbo sled with a bunch of mods here in the near future, and I'll post an update at that point. As a reminder, I do work for Silver Turbos, so I'm not going to give a review of the turbo kit specifically as there's a conflict of interest, but I will give a review of the sled in turbo form, just to compare and contrast all the brands. So let's just jump right into it. How is the single rail? How does the Arctic Cat's 800 motor compare to all the 850s that are out there? In a word, the Arctic Cat is a brilliant sled in most situations. The power plant may be a few ponies shy compared to, say, the Polaris Patriot or the Skidoo 850, but it's more than made up for it in the way the sled delivers power to the ground. The motor has never made me feel like it was undergunned compared to other brands' 850s, and just as a reminder, I've ridden them, and I've even ridden them back to back. I'm not trying to make this a comparison video, but I just have to bring that up. To be honest, I can't put my finger on exactly why the Arctic Cat feels like it can go toe-to-toe with any of the 850s. I don't think it's just the motor. I think it's like I said, the way it puts power to the ground. The most impressive thing about this sled is its ability to keep a rider from getting stuck. Every time I thought I was about to get stuck, well, not every time, but most of the time, I just stay on the throttle and keep giving it some oomph from me as a rider, and I would get out of a bad situation. It did this so many times that I was really shocked. Even my friends were shocked. Even one of them thought I was turboed before I obviously am not turboed. So that should be a pretty big compliment to this sled. Like I said, my mind's been stuck in a pretzel as to why the sled is so hard to get stuck. Is it the track? Is it the alpha? Is it the motor? Is it the gear ratio being a lot lower than Polaris or Skidoo? I don't know. I'm really not sure what exactly keeps this sled from getting stuck. My guess is it's a combination of all of those things. So what was the handling like? Well, to be honest, it reminds me more of a Polaris than a Skidoo in most situations. In most snow conditions, it's predictable and it's a rider sled, meaning it's pretty neutral. It responds well to throttle input, foot positioning, weighting, unweighting, that sort of thing. It holds a nice steep side hill. People say the Alpha doesn't allow that to happen. I disagree, except for when the snow starts to change. And this is the real caveat to the Alpha. In soft snow conditions, in soft consistent snow conditions, it doesn't need to be crazy deep. The Alpha works fine. I didn't find that it was incredibly prone to washout. I got it to wash out a few times in those conditions, but it was pretty rare. However, when the snow conditions get hard, variable track, that's when you start to fight the Alpha, and it's notable. There is no free lunch here. It is a kind of a dual-edged sword. I don't know what other colloquialism I could make here. I felt like I was like full-on Tokyo drift in certain situations where even the skis would be in the air and the back end be dancing under me and kind of washing and sliding and drifting. Not a fun feeling, in my opinion. I've been surprised how many times that would be happening, and I was able to still wrangle the sled kind of on the edge of disaster. If you honestly often ride in hard snow conditions in the mountains, I'd skip this sled. I just will say it. Like, I don't think this is the tool in hard snow conditions. Or I'd buy this sled and spend the money and convert it to a dual rail. So does that mean Alpha is bad? I'm just not sure. This is where, again, my brain is stuck. I can't tell if alpha is the reason the sled is so hard to get stuck, or it's all the other things, or alpha is part of the reason. I'd need to ride the same sled in a dual rail configuration, which I've never done, to really comment there. So being you can't really get it in a dual rail, this is what we're stuck with. And I'll get into my closing thoughts as to whether or not I'd ride this in a second. So where did alpha help me? Besides the whole getting stuck thing, I think it's a little easier to initiate a turn in flatter terrain and kind of meadow skipping, just messing around making pow turns. That's really not what I'm looking for the sled to do. So I don't really care. It's maybe a little easier to initiate a powder turn, but that's really it. That's really where you notice it being easier from a rider's perspective. Again, don't know how much of the alpha is what's helping just keep the rider from getting stuck. A little brainstorm on this. I do wonder if kind of a mini dual rail coupled with a slightly stiffer track laterally would bring forth some of the benefits of alpha without all the negatives. Just an idea. I don't want to get too hung up on this. I know I have. I've spent most of the review talking about it. It's not like I'm washing out all day, every day. Even in hard snow conditions, I could make it work. I'm just saying this is not the tool for the job in those conditions, and this is really the thing that differentiates the Arctic Cat Alpha from a lot of the other sleds. I know it's what everybody wants to talk about. So the other thing I did want to comment on, I don't know if anybody remembers, there was a video a couple years ago of Rob Kincaid, rest in peace, racing a turbo Polaris on his cat. I can't remember if it was an alpha or not, and he smokes the thing, and I always thought it was a BS video. As I've ridden the sled, I don't think it was a BS video. Like I said, for a lot of reasons, this thing just finds traction. It just keeps you from getting stuck, and I think that's where Cat really shines. Another thing to comment, sled weight. In stock form, it's about 25 to 30 pounds heavier than a comparable Polaris and about 10 to 15 pounds lighter than a comparable Skidoo. Could I feel this? Not really. On the snow, it feels closer to the Polaris's weight than the Skidoo's weight. I think this is because of how good the sled sheds snow, except for the running boards, which I'll talk about in a minute. Real world riding, I bet most Polaris sleds in deep snow are carrying over 10 pounds of snow between the skid and the tunnel. The Cat really isn't carrying that much. So I bet you it's closer in weight to the Polaris than people think. And if you do the math, like let's say it's 15 pounds different, we're talking 0.1% of a sled's total wet weight when you're riding. So I'm sorry, nobody's going to feel 0.1% of the machine's weight, even if you're Chris Brand. So I just say most of these are going to feel similar, and again, the reason is because of the percentages. It just kind of works out that way. Moving on to suspension, I had the ATAC model, which means I can adjust the suspension's valving from the bar. This sounds cool, but in reality, the subpar valving from Arctic Cat made this more of a gimmick. And what I mean by that is I don't think the shocks are valved very well from the factory, and because it's ATAC, I can't just send these off to a tuner. There are a few tuners that can work on them, but for the most part, people can't work on them. So I'm stuck with the valving from Arctic Cat and this little button I can press on the control panel or on the handlebar to change the valving was it was like soft, medium, firm, and it's like, well, up front I just left it in medium, and out back, because it's the 165, I left it unlocked, and that was kind of it. So I just didn't find that button to be all that useful. I'd probably skip that. And I think Arctic Cat could do some really cool stuff with that in the future. They just haven't got there on the suspension side yet. I also think these shocks could be amazing, and they're just not. In the future, I probably would have gone for the hardcore variant, being the coilover shock is just valved better. I don't have a big thing against air. I just don't think they're valved very well. And I'd also probably go to a 155. I'll talk about that in a minute. Moving on to other stuff I wasn't too fond of. The clunky controls. I don't know why they insist on putting all these controls on the handlebar. I would rather these be on the hood like Polaris and Skidoo. Just leave the ATAC button and the reverse button, say, on the bar. A kill switch, obviously. The running boards, they're awful. I put some set screws in. It helped, but it's still, they're just prone to clogging up. I bring a mallet with me to knock that off. I already talked about the suspension valving. That needs to be better. The suspension travel, that should be increased up front. It's a little anemic compared to the other two brands. I don't know why they don't just increase this to more 8.5, 9 inches as opposed to 7.5 inches. This would give a more compliant ride. It'd lift the sled out of the snow a little bit. There's no real downsides. I don't know why they're doing that. The electronics have been a little finicky. The throttle safety switch was acting up. I had to unplug it. The gas gauge intermittently fails, just says I'm empty when I'm not. And the thumb warmer often gets stuck on high, which just frankly hurts, but whatever. The track isn't the most durable, but I've been pretty hard on it. I haven't been able to fix it so far, so hopefully that holds up. The big problem here is if I do break a track, I've only got one option, and it's super expensive, unlike all the dual rail options out there where you can just go find an aftermarket one for a lot cheaper. So would I buy this sled again compared to all the other sleds out there? For me, yeah, this is actually my favorite sled so far in dead stock form. I'm more of a Polaris guy generally till this point, and at this point I could go back and forth easily. For me and my riding style, this Skidoo is last on my list, but I've ridden the new Turbo and I had a lot of fun on it and was able to make that work for me too. So I mean, we're at a point now where you can ride any of these sleds and ride them well, and they're all going to have pluses or minuses, and I'll do another video really outlining who should buy which sled. But for me, at this point, looking for like a turnkey dead stock snowmobile, the Arctic Cat Alpha is atop that list. Thank you for tuning in, guys. I really appreciate the support. Look forward to posting more content in the near future.